So for me to give up my South African passport would be a very difficult thing to do because I would feel like I'm giving up a part of myself because I grew up there and that is a big part of who I am. I just can't bring myself to doing it. I mean, I've never tried to apply for a Taiwanese passport because I know that I'd have to give up my South African passport. So I can't do it. I really just can't. However, with all that being said, I'm very fortunate in that I have something called an APRC. For those of you who are not sure what an APRC is, it is basically the holy grail of residence certificates for foreigners in Taiwan. It's basically the next best thing after having a Taiwanese passport. I have almost the same rights as a person in Taiwan. Hey everybody, my name is Nathan, and in this video I'm going to be talking about why many foreigners, including myself, here in Taiwan will just never ever truly be Taiwanese. I have a question for you, and if anybody watching this video is able to answer this question, please put your answer down below this video in the comment section because I would really like to know the answer to this question. Why is it that even though a foreigner has lived in Taiwan for over 10 or even over 20 years, speaks Chinese perfectly, works hard, is a value member of society, pays taxes, and makes valuable contributions to Taiwan, why is it that they can still never really become truly Taiwanese? I do have a few ideas as to why this is, but again, if you know the answer to this question or if you think you do, please comment down below this video with your answer because it really does baffle my mind sometimes and I would really like to know the answer to this particular question. After careful consideration and much research, I have come to the following conclusion as to why most foreigners here in Taiwan will never truly be able to call themselves Taiwanese. Taiwan is not a very ethnically diverse country. Or put it this way, there are many different ethnicities in Taiwan, but they only account for a tiny percentage of the population. So in general, you won't actually see much ethnic diversity in regards to the appearance and physical features of people in Taiwan. The vast majority of Taiwanese have similar features or are similar in appearance. Let me elaborate. Currently, according to official records, around 95% of the population in Taiwan are officially Han Chinese. However, many people dispute these claims and they claim that these estimates are inaccurate and are put there by the government for political reasons. According to a recent survey in 2020, 64.3% of people in Taiwan identified as Taiwanese, 2.6% identified as Chinese, 29.9% identified as both, and 3.2% declined to answer. However, I feel like the figures from this particular survey are more related to national identity rather than their actual ethnicity. The gist of what I'm trying to say here is that if you look like a foreigner in Taiwan, then 99.99% of the time you will be labeled as a foreigner here in Taiwan. So, for somebody like me who apparently looks very European, I'm pretty much always going to be labeled as a foreigner in Taiwan. Even if I was born in Taiwan, have a Taiwanese passport, grew up in Taiwan, and went through Taiwan's intense education system and spent my entire life in Taiwan, I would still be labeled or called a foreigner based on my appearance. I have often, and am still often, called a foreigner when walking down the streets in Taiwan. Usually a kid will point to me and go, "Hey, Mama, 你看，外国人," or something to that effect. In other situations, I'll just be walking down the street and I'll see people staring at me, and you can literally hear them whispering to their friends, like, "Oh wow, look, there's a foreigner, look at the foreigner, ooh, a foreigner." And, you know, they'll be quite surprised or they'll seem very interested that there's this person who looks very different to, you know, what they normally see on a sort of day-to-day basis. And absolutely, I would just like to reiterate, there is nothing wrong with this. I don't mind this at all. It's not a problem. But the point I'm trying to make is that many people in Taiwan will sort of just categorize you as a foreigner based strictly on your appearance. Again, you know, this sort of behavior is largely area dependent, but it definitely happens. For example, this sort of reaction will happen much less in places such as Taipei City, but it will happen more often as you get further away from the CBDs of many of the cities and once you venture out into the country and the less developed areas, simply because in the CBDs and the more developed areas like Taipei City, for example, there are a lot more foreigners. It's a much more international city, so people are used to seeing foreigners. But once you go out into sort of less developed areas of the countryside, people don't see foreigners that often, so for them to see a foreigner is often quite an interesting and sort of unusual experience. Even now, when people ask me where I'm from and I say South Africa, they are genuinely surprised. The majority of Taiwanese people I've met didn't know that there are Caucasians in South Africa. Most of the time, when I tell a local that I'm from South Africa, most of them will go like,南非不是有比较多黑人吗？不是比较黑吗？ Something like this, right? So they feel like only black people come from South Africa. They aren't aware that there is a Caucasian demographic, or a chunk of the population in South Africa are Caucasian. They are not aware of this. Of course, people who are more affluent and more well-traveled and that sort of thing and more well-educated, they will be aware of this. But most people that I've spoken to, for some reason, they are very surprised that I'm white and from South Africa. These two things, they just don't like compute. For them, it's like, what? No ways, come on. That's impossible. Another reason why many people might be sort of classified as foreigners in Taiwan is due to Taiwan's immigration laws. Based on my understanding, only Taiwanese-born citizens can actually apply or have dual citizenship. So, for someone like myself, if I wanted to get a Taiwanese passport, I would have to, based on the current laws, give up my South African passport. And to be honest with you, that is just not something that I'm ready to do quite yet. Based on my research, there are special sort of exceptions or situations where the Taiwanese government will give a foreign national a Taiwanese passport and allow them to simultaneously hold their passport from the country in which they were born. Like, let's say, for example, my country allows dual citizenship. If I wanted to get a Taiwanese passport, I would have to give up my South African passport. And I find this to be quite unfair, actually. But I'm sure the Taiwanese government has their reasons for doing this. I'm just not sure exactly what those reasons are. If you know what those reasons are, I would love to know. Again, please comment down below this video because I'm not entirely sure why these laws are in place. Now, let's just assume for a moment I did give up my South African passport and I got a Taiwanese passport. So there, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I would be Taiwanese, right? However, even if I'm walking down the street, I would still be labeled as a foreigner. The vast majority of people in Taiwan would categorize me as a foreigner, even though I have a Taiwanese passport. So even if you have a Taiwanese passport, you speak Chinese, you were born in Taiwan, you lived your entire life in Taiwan, if you look foreign, you're a foreigner, and that's that. Giving up my South African passport is not an easy thing for me to do, and I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to actually do that. I mean, technically I could, but I don't want to. So I might feel like, yeah, I am Taiwanese and South African in my heart and in my mind, but in reality, on paper, I am South African. And, you know, a lot of my childhood friends still live in South Africa. Most of my family still lives in South Africa. So for me to give up my South African passport would be a very difficult thing to do because I would feel like I'm giving up a part of myself because I grew up there and that is a big part of who I am. I just can't bring myself to doing it. I mean, I've never tried to apply for a Taiwanese passport because I know that I'd have to give up my South African passport. So I can't do it. I really just can't. I'm quite happy with being called a foreigner. I have no problem with being categorized or labeled as an Adoa or a foreigner or a Waigoran or a Lawai or whatever you want to call it. That's okay. I don't have a problem with that. However, with all that being said, I'm very fortunate in that I have something called an APRC. For those of you who are not sure what an APRC is, it is basically the holy grail of residence certificates for foreigners in Taiwan. It's basically the next best thing after having a Taiwanese passport. I have almost the same rights as a person in Taiwan. Of course, there are a few exceptions, like I can't vote and a few other things like that, but in my opinion, the APRC is fantastic. It lasts for a very long time. It doesn't actually have an expiration date on it, and I can travel freely in and out of Taiwan with that APRC. So I'm actually quite happy with my current status and where I currently am in Taiwan in regards to my status. Okay, everybody, that's it from this Arawa. I will see you in the next one. Cheers.